The Force flows through all living things, binding the galaxy together in an endless dance of light and shadow. For 1,000 generations, the Jedi had studied this mystical energy, codified its principles, divided its nature into strict dichotomies of light and dark. They believed they understood the fundamental nature of power in the universe. They were wrong. Raven had been fighting for 3 days straight. Trigon's demonic forces had breached the dimensional barriers again, and the Teen Titans were scattered across Jump City, trying to contain the incursions. She'd pushed herself beyond exhaustion, her soul self tearing through demon after demon, her empathic senses screaming with the psychic echoes of terror and rage. When the final demon lord cornered her in the ruins of the waterfront, when her control finally slipped and her father's power surged through her veins, threatening to consume everything she was, she'd done the only thing she could, opened a portal to anywhere, everywhere, nowhere. The mystical energies tore through reality itself, and Raven fell through the spaces between dimensions, where physics held no meaning and time ran backward and forward simultaneously. When she emerged, everything was different. The portal spat her out 300 meters above Coruscant's surface at the exact moment a separatist droid gunship was strafing the Senate district. Raven's empathic senses, already raw from days of combat, were immediately overwhelmed by the emotional tsunami of a planet-spanning city of trillions. Fear, anger, determination, grief. The sheer psychic weight of it crashed into her consciousness like a physical blow. She fell, her cloak whipped around her as she plummeted through Coruscant's artificial canyons, past speeders and air taxis, past transparisteel windows where office workers dove for cover from the droid attack. Raven's training reasserted itself through the sensory overload. Meditation mantras her adoptive monks had taught her. Mental disciplines that pushed back the crushing weight of alien emotions. Azeroth, Metrion, Zinthos. Dark energy erupted from her body as her soul self manifested, the shadowy astral form of a massive raven wrapping around her physical body and arresting her fall. She floated there, suspended in the air traffic lanes, her empathic senses struggling to process the sheer scale of this city. Billions of minds. Billions of emotional signatures, and underneath it all, flowing through everything, like a cosmic river. Something else, something familiar and utterly alien at the same time. Energy, power, life itself, concentrated and flowing through invisible channels. It wasn't magic, not the way Raven understood magic, but it wasn't entirely different either. The droid gunship that had been terrorizing civilians suddenly banked toward her, its automated targeting systems identifying her levitating form as a priority threat. Twin laser cannons swiveled, acquiring target lock. Raven's violet eyes narrowed beneath her hood. She was exhausted, disoriented, stranded in what was clearly another dimension. But she was also the daughter of Trigon the Terrible, and she'd been fighting since she could walk. Her hands came up, dark energy coalescing around her fingers. The droid gunship fired, bolts of coherent light that should have vaporized her on contact. Instead, they stopped in midair, caught in a telekinetic grip that turned physics into a suggestion. With a gesture, Raven redirected the energy back at its source. The gunship's armor plating melted under its own weapons, and the craft spiraled out of control, crashing into an abandoned warehouse 3 blocks away. That's when she felt them, presences in this strange energy field, powerful and focused, moving toward her location with purpose. Raven's empathic senses picked up determination, curiosity, caution, and underneath it all, a disciplined calm that reminded her of her own meditation training. 3 figures appeared on a nearby landing platform. Clearly having used some form of enhanced movement to reach her position impossibly fast. 2 men and 1 woman, all wearing similar robes in earth tones, all carrying cylindrical weapons at their belts that hummed with barely contained energy. The woman stepped forward, athletic build, dark skin, her presence in the emotional spectrum radiating controlled confidence. "I am Jedi Master Luminara Unduli. You've entered a restricted military zone during an active separatist attack. Identify yourself." Jedi. The word meant nothing to Raven, but the tone was universal. Authority backed by power, demanding answers. She dealt with enough government agencies, enough military organizations, enough people who saw her demonic heritage and assumed threat. "Raven," she replied, her voice carrying its characteristic monotone despite her exhaustion. "I'm not with the separatists. I don't even know where I am." One of the men, younger, with a thin beard and eyes that suggested he'd seen too much combat for his age, studied her with visible suspicion. "You don't know where you are. You're on Coruscant, capital of the Galactic Republic. And that trick you pulled with the gunship, that wasn't any Force technique I've ever seen." Force. Raven's empathic senses probed the energy flowing around these 3 individuals. It responded to their will, moved at their command, but it felt different from her mysticism. "Is that what you call the energy flowing through everything here?" The 3rd Jedi, an older man with graying hair and a presence that suggested deep experience, exchanged glances with his companions. "She doesn't know the Force, Master Unduli. This is highly irregular." "Agreed." "Master Kun," Luminara replied. "But look at her. That levitation isn't Force-based. It's something else, something darker." The word darker carried weight Raven recognized immediately. These Jedi, whatever they were, had their own dichotomies, their own divisions between acceptable and unacceptable power. She'd heard it before from people who feared what they didn't understand. "I'm not your enemy," Raven said carefully, allowing her soul self to dissipate and lowering herself to the landing platform. Standing before these 3 warriors in their traditional robes, she suddenly felt very aware of her own appearance. The dark blue cloak, the leotard beneath it, the chakra stone on her forehead that marked her demonic heritage. I was fighting in my own dimension when a portal malfunction brought me here. I just want to understand where I am and how to get home. Master Kun's hand moved subtly toward the cylindrical weapon at his belt. Your presence radiates darkness in the Force. We can feel it. Cold, alien, touched by something that shouldn't exist in our galaxy. You may not be with the Separatists, but that doesn't make you safe. Raven's jaw tightened. This was always the problem. Her father's heritage, the demonic power flowing through her veins, the darkness she fought every day to control. People sensed it and made assumptions. I know what you're feeling. I know what I am. But I control it. I choose how to use this power. Judge me by my actions, not by what you sense. Wise words, a new voice said from behind the 3 Jedi. But words are wind. Actions define us. young one." The three Jedi immediately turned and bowed respectfully as a figure emerged from the shadows of a nearby archway. He was small, barely 2 feet tall, with green skin, pointed ears, and eyes that carried the weight of centuries. His presence in Raven's empathic senses was overwhelming, not in volume, but in depth. This being had lived longer than civilizations, had seen more than she could comprehend, and commanded the strange energy of this universe with casual mastery. "Master Yoda," Luminara greeted him respectfully. "We detected an unusual presence and came to investigate. This girl claims to have arrived through some kind of portal from another dimension." The ancient being, Yoda, approached Raven with slow, deliberate steps, leaning on a gnarled walking stick. His eyes studied her with an intensity that made her want to retreat, to throw up her mental shields, to hide the darkness she carried. But something in his gaze suggested he already saw everything, that shields would be pointless. "Strong in the Force, you are," Yoda said, his syntax unusual but his meaning clear. "Yet not of the Force, I sense, touched by powers ancient and terrible. Show me, you will, what brought you here." It wasn't a request. Raven felt the pull of his will, backed by centuries of discipline and power. But she also sensed no malice, no desire to harm, only an overwhelming curiosity tempered by cautious wisdom. Against her better judgment, Raven lowered her mental shield slightly and allowed her recent memories to surface. The battle with Trigon's forces, the desperation, the loss of control, the portal. Yoda's eyes widened fractionally, which, for a being of his evident self-control, suggested genuine surprise. "A demon's child, you are, carrying darkness inherited, not chosen, yet fighting it every moment. Understand this struggle, I do." The other Jedi looked shocked. Master Kuhn's hand moved closer to his weapon. "Master Yoda, if she's connected to some kind of demonic entity, fear and ignorance, the path to the dark side are," Yoda interrupted firmly. "Judge her by her choices. We must, not by her birth. Chose you did not to be Trigon's daughter, but chose you do every day to resist his influence. Respect this, I do." Raven felt something crack in her chest, some defensive wall she'd maintained for so long. This ancient being, this Jedi master, understood. He saw the darkness in her and didn't immediately condemn it. He recognized the daily battle, the constant struggle to be more than her heritage demanded. "Thank you," she said quietly, and meant it more than she'd meant anything in weeks. The moment was shattered by a proximity alarm wailing across the district. Luminara's hand went to her ear, listening to a communication device. "Master Yoda, the Separatists are launching a coordinated strike on the Jedi Temple. Multiple droid dropships inbound. The Council is mobilizing, but we're spread thin across multiple fronts." Yoda's expression hardened. "Return to the temple. We must. The girl—" "I can help," Raven interrupted. "If these Separatists are attacking, if people are in danger, I'm not going to stand by and watch." Master Kuhn shook his head. "This isn't your fight. You don't understand the conflict, the politics, I understand innocent people being hurt." Raven cut him off, her voice carrying an edge of steel. "I've spent my entire life fighting to protect people from threats they don't understand. If you're fighting to defend this city, I'm on your side." Yoda studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Accept your help, we will. But stay close, you must. Many dangers in this war, there are, and many who would seek to use your power for their own purposes. The warning carried weight that Raven's empathic senses couldn't fully parse, layers of meaning suggesting threats beyond the immediate military conflict. But before she could ask for clarification, Master unduly activated her weapon, the cylindrical hilt igniting into a beam of brilliant green light that hummed with barely contained energy. A lightsaber. The word came to Raven unbidden, pulled from the emotional impressions radiating from the Jedi around her. "Then, let's move," Luminara commanded. "The temple is under attack, and we have minutes before those dropships deploy their payload." What followed was Raven's introduction to Clone Wars combat at its most chaotic. The Jedi moved with enhanced speed, clearly using this force to augment their physical capabilities beyond human norms. Raven kept pace by levitating, her dark energy allowing her to glide through the air alongside warriors who could leap impossible distances. The Jedi Temple District was under full assault when they arrived. Separatist droid dropships, massive spherical craft that bristled with weapons, disgorged hundreds of battle droids onto the streets. The droids were humanoid in shape, but clearly mechanical, carrying blaster rifles that spat bolts of energy with mechanical precision. Clone troopers, soldiers in white armor, who all seemed to share the same general build and voice, were already engaged, their rifles returning fire with disciplined coordination. Raven's empathic senses picked up something strange about these soldiers. They all felt similar, their emotional signatures eerily uniform, as if they were somehow related or connected. "Defend the temple entrance!" a clone commander shouted over the din of combat. "Don't let them reach the archives!" A squad of droids broke through the clone lines, their blasters targeting civilians who'd been caught in the crossfire. Raven didn't think, didn't weigh politics or sides or the complexity of galactic conflict. She simply acted. "Azarath Metrion Zinthos!" Her soul self erupted from her body, a massive spectral raven constructed of pure, dark energy that dwarfed the battle droids. The construct swept through the droid formation like a scythe through wheat, her telekinetic power crushing durasteel and circuitry with contemptuous ease. 12 droids crumpled into mechanical wreckage in seconds. The battlefield went suddenly silent. Clone troopers stared. The Jedi Masters paused mid-combat. Even the remaining droids seemed to process the impossibility of what they'd just witnessed. "What the hell was that?" a clone trooper whispered, his voice carrying over the sudden quiet. Master unduly recovered first, her lightsaber carving through 3 more droids before they could resume their attack protocols. "Whatever it was, it's on our side. Press the advantage." The battle resumed with renewed intensity, but now Raven was fully committed. Her levitation allowed her to position herself above the combat, raining down telekinetic strikes on droid formations. Her empathic senses, despite being overwhelmed by the emotional chaos, gave her a battlefield awareness that let her anticipate droid movements and coordinate with the clone troopers without verbal communication. A droid dropship targeted her with its main cannons, clearly identifying her as a priority threat. Raven extended both hands, her dark energy forming a shield that caught the plasma bolts and reflected them back. The dropship's armor buckled under its own firepower, and the massive craft listed to one side before crashing into an abandoned warehouse. Master Yoda fought nearby, his small form a blur of green lightsaber strikes that defied his apparent age and size. But even while dispatching droids with economical precision, Raven felt his attention focused partially on her, studying her techniques, analyzing her power, reaching conclusions she couldn't quite parse through the chaos of battle. "Incoming!" a clone commander shouted. "Tank droids on the approach." 3 massive mechanical constructs rolled into the plaza, heavily armored vehicles with enormous cannon barrels that glowed with charging energy. The clones fell back, knowing their rifles couldn't penetrate that kind of armor. The Jedi repositioned, preparing to deflect the inevitable bombardment. Raven felt the intention forming in the droid targeting computers, sensed the moment before they fired. Her hands came up. And pure, mystical force, not the force these Jedi wielded, but something older, darker, drawn from her demonic heritage, coalesced into a barrier of solid shadow. The tank cannons fired. Plasma bolts capable of reducing buildings to molten slag struck Raven's barrier and simply stopped, suspended in the dark energy like insects in amber. Then, with a gesture, she sent the energy back. The tank droids exploded simultaneously. Their own firepower turned against them with interest. The shockwave knocked nearby battle droids off their feet and sent debris raining across the plaza. Master Kun landed beside her, his lightsaber still humming with barely contained energy. "That power. It's not the Force. It's something else entirely. Something that feels wrong in ways I can't articulate." "It's mysticism," Raven replied, her voice tight with concentration. "Magic drawn from mystical dimensions. In my universe, it's distinct from whatever the Force is here. But it works, and right now, that's what matters." Before Kun could respond, the remaining droids began a coordinated retreat, clearly receiving orders from whatever intelligence commanded the separatist forces. The battle wound down as quickly as it had begun, leaving behind destroyed droids, damaged buildings, and clone troopers checking each other for injuries. Luminara approached Raven, her expression unreadable. "You fought well. Your powers are unusual, but effective. The Council will want to speak with you, and given what you've just displayed, refusing probably isn't an option." "I wasn't planning to refuse," Raven replied, her exhaustion finally catching up to her. The dimensional transit, the overwhelming empathic input, the extended combat, it was all pressing down on her reserves. "But I need to understand what's happening here. This war, these factions, why you're fighting." "Then come," Yoda said, appearing beside them with his characteristic quiet approach. "To the council chamber we go. Questions you have, answers we possess, but questions for you we also have, and answers you will provide." It wasn't a threat, but it wasn't entirely a request either. Raven nodded, too tired to argue even if she'd wanted to. As they walked toward the Jedi Temple, a massive structure that radiated power and history in ways Raven's mystical senses could barely process, she felt other presences watching her, some curious, some afraid, and one somewhere far away but focused with predatory intensity, radiating darkness that recognized a kindred spirit. Count Dooku, formerly a Jedi Master, and now a Sith Lord, had felt Raven's arrival and witnessed her display of power through the Force, and unlike the Jedi, who saw her darkness with suspicion and caution, Dooku saw potential, saw possibility, saw a weapon that could be turned against those who'd rejected him. Raven felt that distant attention, like ice water down her spine. She'd felt this before, when powerful beings looked at her and saw not a person, but a tool, a weapon, a means to an end. She pulled her cloak tighter around herself, following the Jedi Masters into their temple, and wondered if coming to this universe had been a portal malfunction or a cosmic punishment. Either way, she was here now, and somewhere in this galaxy of war and mystical energy and political complexity, she would need to find her place or create one, regardless of what the Jedi, the Separatists, or any other faction wanted from her. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. The daughter of Trigon the Terrible had arrived in the Clone Wars, and nothing would ever be quite the same. The Jedi Council Chamber occupied the highest spire of the temple, a circular room with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered panoramic views of Coruscant's endless cityscape. 12 seats arranged in a circle, each occupied by a master who had spent decades, sometimes centuries, studying the Force and guiding the Jedi Order through an increasingly complicated galaxy. Raven stood in the center of that circle, acutely aware of the scrutiny focused on her from every direction. Her empathic senses were working overtime, picking up layers of emotion carefully controlled but never entirely suppressed, curiosity from some, suspicion from others, and from Master Yoda, something that felt almost like recognition. Master Mace Windu, a powerfully built man whose presence in the Force radiated absolute discipline, spoke first. You claim to be from another dimension, that you arrived through a mystical portal, and yet your power doesn't align with any Force tradition we've encountered in thousands of years of recorded history. Because it's not Force-based, Raven replied, keeping her voice level despite her exhaustion. In my universe, mysticism and magic exist alongside other forms of power. I draw on mystical energy from dimensions outside normal space. My father, she paused, the word still tasting bitter, is a demon lord named Trigon. I inherited his power, but I choose not to use it the way he would. A demon, Jedi Master Plo Koon repeated, his mask-filtered voice carrying skepticism. You're asking us to believe in entities from mythology. I'm not asking you to believe anything, Raven countered. I'm telling you what I am. You can sense the darkness in me. You've made that clear. What you're feeling is my demonic heritage. It's real, it's dangerous, and I've spent my entire life learning to control it so I don't become like him. Master Ki-Adi-Mundi, a Syrian with an elongated cranium, leaned forward in his seat. The darkness we sense in you is unlike anything we've encountered. The dark side of the Force corrupts through passion, through fear and anger. But your darkness feels fundamental, as if it's woven into your very being. It is, Raven confirmed. I was born to be a portal for Trigon's invasion of my dimension. My existence was meant to facilitate the destruction of my entire world. But I rejected that destiny. I fight against it every single day, and I've managed to keep him contained for years. Yoda's ears twitched, and he spoke with quiet authority. Strong you are, stronger than you know. To resist such a destiny, from birth onward, rare such strength is, admirable even. Mace Windu's expression remained stern. Master Yoda, with respect, we're in the middle of a galactic war. The Separatists have Sith leadership. Count Dooku has already demonstrated the dangers of falling to the dark side. Now we have a girl claiming demonic heritage, wielding powers we don't understand, appearing at a critical moment in the conflict. The potential for manipulation is considerable. I'm not being manipulated, Raven said firmly, and I'm not interested in your war. I just want to understand how I got here, and whether there's a way back to my dimension. Master Shak Ti, a Togruta with distinctive head tails, spoke with measured consideration. Your arrival was witnessed by multiple Jedi. The energy signature was recorded by temple sensors. Master Yoda, you examined her memories. Do you believe her account is truthful? Yoda closed his eyes, his ancient face creased with concentration. Truth, she speaks. See it in her, I do. Fear her own power, she does. Fear becoming what her father is. This fear, healthy it is, keeps her grounded. But dangerous she remains. In the wrong hands, a weapon she could become. Then we keep her here, Plo Koon suggested. Under observation. Perhaps she can learn to understand the Force, to channel her abilities in ways that don't draw on darkness. Raven's hands clenched at her sides. I'm not a child who needs to be taught your philosophy. And I'm definitely not staying prisoner because you're afraid of what I might do. No one said prisoner, Mace Windu replied, though his tone suggested the distinction was semantic. But you've demonstrated significant power during a military engagement. The Republic has a vested interest in ensuring that power isn't turned against us, or worse, recruited by the Separatists. The Separatists? Raven asked. You keep mentioning them. I don't even know what this war is about. The question seemed to surprise the Council. Master Luminara Unduli, who had escorted Raven to the temple, spoke with patient explanation. The Separatist Alliance is a coalition of star systems that have seceded from the Galactic Republic. They're led by Count Dooku, a former Jedi who turned to the dark side and now serves as a Sith Lord. The Republic created a clone army to fight the Separatist droid forces. The Jedi have been pressed into service as generals, leading clone troops in battles across the galaxy. Your warriors now, Raven observed, her empathic senses picking up the discomfort many council members felt at that description. That bothers you. You weren't supposed to be soldiers. The Jedi are guardians of peace, Shak Ti replied. But when the Republic is threatened, when billions of lives hang in the balance, we cannot stand aside. The Force guides us to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Raven understood that reasoning. It was the same logic that had driven her to join the Teen Titans, to fight despite knowing her powers made her dangerous. So this Count Dooku, he's your enemy. And you think he might try to recruit me because of my darkness? It's not a question of might, Mace Windu said bluntly. If Dooku sensed your arrival, and given the power you displayed, that's almost certain he will make contact. The Sith seek out those touched by darkness, offering power and understanding in exchange for service. It's how they operate. As if summoned by the mention of his name, Every Jedi in the chamber suddenly stiffened. Raven felt it too, a presence in that strange force energy, reaching across vast distances with focused intention, dark, sophisticated, utterly confident, and speaking directly into her mind. Child of demons, daughter of darkness, how fascinating that you've fallen into the hands of those who will never truly understand you. Raven's mental shield snapped into place immediately. Her mystical training providing defenses the Jedi apparently lacked. Someone's in my head. Telepathic communication. Let me guess. Count Dooku. The council members exchanged alarmed glances. Yoda's eyes snapped open. Felt his presence, we all did. But speaking directly to you, he is. Through your mental shields, he broke? No, Raven corrected. I blocked him, but he tried. He's still out there, watching. Impressive, Dooku's mental voice continued, seemingly amused by her resistance. The Jedi cannot shield themselves from me so easily. Your mystical training provides advantages they lack. We should speak, you and I, away from those who fear your nature. Not interested, Raven said aloud, knowing Dooku could hear her mental response. I've dealt with enough manipulative megalomaniacs. Whatever you're selling, I'm not buying. The presence withdrew, but not before leaving a final impression. Amusement tinged with patience, the sense of a predator willing to wait for its prey to make a mistake. Mace Windu rose from his seat, his expression grave. Dooku making direct contact, this quickly confirms our concerns. Raven, whether you want to be involved in this war or not, you're now a person of interest to both sides. The question is what we do about that. Before anyone could respond, the chamber doors burst open. A young man strode in, tall, with dark robes and a confidence that bordered on arrogance. His presence in Raven's empathic senses was a complex storm. Power barely contained, fear hidden beneath bravado, anger simmering under iron discipline, and underneath it all, genuine compassion fighting for dominance over darker impulses. Masters, I heard about the girl who appeared during the Separatist attack, the young man said, his eyes immediately finding Raven and studying her with intense interest. Is it true she channels some kind of dark power that isn't the Force? Anakin Skywalker, Mace Windu said with evident disapproval. This is a closed council session. You were not summoned. I'm the chosen one, Anakin replied, with the casual audacity of someone who'd heard that title too many times. Shouldn't I be aware of potential dark side threats? Raven felt an immediate headache forming. The chosen one. Every dimension apparently had someone who thought destiny made them special. I'm not a dark side threat. I'm exhausted, confused, and really tired of being talked about like I'm not in the room. Anakin's attention focused entirely on her, and she felt his Force presence, enormous, barely controlled, pressing against her shields like a curious child poking something dangerous. You blocked Dooku's telepathy. Even Master Yoda has trouble doing that. How? Mystical training, Raven replied, studying this chosen one with her empathic senses and not liking what she found. Meditation disciplines that create mental barriers. It's not that complicated if you practice. I practice, Anakin said, a hint of defensiveness entering his voice. I meditate. But the council says I'm too attached, too emotional. They think my connection to... He stopped abruptly, clearly catching himself before revealing something personal. Raven's empathic senses filled in the gap. Love, hidden and forbidden, for someone he couldn't openly acknowledge. The weight of secret relationships. The fear of discovery, the anger at being forced to hide something fundamental to his identity. She understood that feeling intimately. "Skywalker," Master Windu said sharply, "return to your quarters. We'll brief you on the situation when the Council has reached a decision." "With respect, Master Windu, I think I should stay," Anakin countered, moving closer to Raven. "She's confused, she's in a strange place, and everyone's treating her like a threat. I remember what that feels like. Maybe she needs someone to talk to who isn't going to lecture her about the dangers of darkness." The words carried layers of bitterness that suggested Anakin had received more than his share of such lectures. Raven felt the Council's disapproval radiating through the chamber. They clearly didn't trust Anakin's judgment, didn't approve of his tendency to question their authority. Yoda's ears lowered slightly, a gesture Raven was beginning to recognize as concern. "Young Skywalker, good intentions you have, but complicated this situation is, and drawn to darkness you sometimes are. Dangerous for you to spend time with one whose nature is inherently dark." "I'm not going to corrupt him," Raven said, surprising herself by defending Anakin. "And frankly, if your chosen one is so weak-willed that talking to me would push him to the dark side, you have bigger problems than my arrival." The chamber fell silent. Several council members looked scandalized that she'd spoken so bluntly about their prophesied savior. But Anakin smiled, genuine appreciation breaking through his earlier defensiveness. "I like her," he said simply. "She's honest." Master Obi-Wan Kenobi, who Raven hadn't noticed entering behind Anakin, placed a hand on his former apprentice's shoulder. "Anakin, your instincts are admirable, but perhaps we should allow the Council to make decisions about someone's life without including them in the conversation," Raven interrupted. "I've had enough of that. Master Yoda, you said my arrival was truthful. Master Windu, you're concerned I'll be recruited by your enemies. Fine. Here's my offer. I'll help you with your war, not as a soldier, but as someone who can provide unique capabilities against threats you're facing. In exchange, you help me research how I got here and whether I can return to my dimension. And nobody tries to imprison me, control me, or dictate how I should use my powers. Deal?" The council members conferred silently, their expressions revealing the debate happening through whatever telepathic channels the Jedi used. Finally, Mace Windu spoke. "Your offer has merit, but we would require supervision, someone to accompany you on any missions to ensure you understand our protocols and that you don't inadvertently cause harm through ignorance of our galaxy's complexities." "I volunteer," Anakin said immediately. "Absolutely not," 3 council members said simultaneously. Obi-Wan sighed the sigh of a man who'd had this argument too many times. "Masters, while I understand your concerns, Anakin is our most powerful Jedi Knight. If Raven is going to be working with Republic forces, having someone of Anakin's abilities nearby provides security for both parties. It also puts our most valuable asset in proximity to an unknown factor radiating dark side energy," Plo Koon countered. Raven felt her patience evaporating. "I'm standing right here, and I'm not dark side anything. I'm a person with abilities you don't understand, trying to navigate a situation I didn't ask for. If you can't trust your chosen one to work with me without falling apart, then maybe he's not as chosen as you think." Yoda chuckled, an unexpected sound that broke the tension. wisdom in harsh words. Sometimes there is. Trust young Skywalker we must, or what point is training? And trust the girl we must attempt, or what kind of Jedi are we? Fear leads to the dark side. Fear of her we must overcome. The ancient master's words carried weight that even Mace Windu couldn't easily dismiss. After another moment of silent conference, Windu nodded reluctantly. Very well. Anakin will accompany Raven on a trial mission, something relatively straightforward, where her abilities can be assessed in a controlled environment. If she proves trustworthy, we'll discuss more permanent arrangements. What kind of mission? Raven asked. Shaktai pulled up a holographic display showing a star system. The agricultural world of Ryloth is under separatist blockade. The population is starving, and Republic forces are struggling to break through the droid fleet. Your unique abilities, particularly your apparent immunity to standard blaster fire and your telekinetic power, could provide the advantage needed to deliver supplies to the surface. You want me to help with a humanitarian mission, Raven said, understanding the subtext. If she was genuinely here to help, she'd accept. If she had darker motives, she'd refuse or sabotage the operation. Fine. When do we leave? Tomorrow, Obi-Wan replied. That gives you time to rest, to be briefed on the situation, and for Anakin to explain the basics of galactic politics without overwhelming you. I'll accompany you as well. Someone needs to make sure my former Padawan doesn't do anything reckless. Anakin rolled his eyes, but didn't argue. Raven felt the bond between them, master and apprentice. Brother figures who'd been through hell together and carried scars, physical and emotional, from the experience. As the council dismissed them, Yoda approached Raven directly. His small form barely reached her waist, but his presence felt immense. A question, before you go, I have. Your father, this demon Trigon, still connected to him, are you? Raven's breath caught. Always. He's always there, in the back of my mind, waiting for me to slip, waiting for a moment of weakness where he can take control. Why? Because the dark side, similar it is, Yoda said quietly, always present, always tempting, always waiting for fear or anger to open the door. Struggle with this, young Skywalker does, perhaps helping each other. You both could. Understanding shared struggles, powerful it can be. The ancient Jedi Master walked away, leaving Raven to process the implications. He'd essentially acknowledged that Anakin had darkness in him, that he struggled with control just as she did, and rather than separating them, Yoda was suggesting they might actually help each other. It was the most understanding any authority figure had shown her in years. Anakin led her out of the council chamber, Obi-Wan following with the long-suffering patience of someone used to his companion's impulsiveness. So, Anakin said as they walked through the temple's massive corridors, daughter of a demon, that's got to make family reunions awkward. Despite everything, Raven almost smiled. I don't attend family reunions. Tends to end with apocalyptic destruction and psychological trauma. Sounds like meeting with the council, Anakin replied. They mean well, but they're so stuck in their traditions they can't adapt to the reality of the war. All those rules about attachment, about emotional control. They don't understand that caring about people makes you stronger, not weaker. Attachment can be dangerous, Raven countered, her mystical training providing a different perspective. My father uses emotional connections as weapons. He corrupts people through their love, their fear for those they care about. Detachment has its own wisdom. Maybe, Anakin admitted, but complete detachment makes you cold, makes you unable to understand why you're fighting in the first place. The Jedi are supposed to be compassionate, but how can you be compassionate if you don't allow yourself to care? Obi-Wan cleared his throat. Anakin, perhaps we shouldn't burden our guest with philosophical debates about Jedi doctrine on her first day in our galaxy. It's fine, Raven said. Honestly, it's refreshing to hear someone question authority instead of blindly following orders. Where I come from, I work with a team of young heroes. We respect our mentors, but we make our own decisions. The Teen Titans, Anakin said, and Raven realized he'd picked the name from her surface thoughts during their brief mental contact. Sorry, I didn't mean to intrude, but your shields relaxed for a moment. You miss them. Your team. Raven's chest tightened. Beast Boy's terrible jokes. Starfire's overwhelming optimism. Cyborg's steady presence. Robin's leadership. Yeah, I miss them. They're the closest thing to family I've ever had. And now I'm trapped in another dimension, fighting someone else's war with no idea if I'll ever see them again. The vulnerability in her voice was unintentional, but it created an unexpected connection. Anakin's hand briefly touched her shoulder. Not invasive, just a gesture of understanding. We'll help you get home, I promise. But in the meantime, you're not alone here. You've got us. Obi-Wan smiled, genuine warmth in the expression. Anakin's right. The Jedi may be cautious, but we don't abandon people in need. And for what it's worth, your control in combat was impressive. Most Force users with that kind of power would have been consumed by it. The fact that you maintain such discipline while channeling darkness speaks to extraordinary strength of will. Or extraordinary fear of what happens if I lose control, Raven replied honestly. Fear can be a prison, Obi-Wan acknowledged, but it can also be a teacher. The key is not letting it dominate you. They reached guest quarters, a simple but comfortable room with a view of Coruscant's endless cityscape. Raven's empathic senses immediately noticed the dampening field around the room. Subtle, but present. They were monitoring her, watching to see if she was a threat. She couldn't entirely blame them. Get some rest, Anakin suggested. Tomorrow's mission won't be easy, but it'll give you a chance to see what this war is really about. And maybe, if we're lucky, we won't run into any Sith Lords or droid armies. When has luck ever been on our side, Anakin? Obi-Wan asked dryly. As they left, Raven collapsed onto the bed, exhaustion finally overwhelming her. The dampening field buzzed at the edge of her perception. Somewhere far away, she felt Dooku's attention still watching, still waiting. And deeper, in the suppressed corners of her mind, Triggan's presence stirred with interest at this new universe, this new playground of emotions and power. She pulled her cloak around herself and whispered her mantra. Azarath, Metrion, Zinthos. The meditation helped, pushing back the darkness, maintaining the control that defined her existence. Tomorrow, she'd fly into battle alongside Jedi warriors in a galactic war she didn't understand. Tonight, she just needed to survive her own mind. In the Force, in the mystical dimensions, and in the physical world, Raven stood at the intersection of three realities and wondered which one would ultimately claim her. The Republic assault cruiser Resolute cut through hyperspace toward Ryloth, its hangar bay a controlled chaos of clone troopers preparing for combat and Jedi coordinating battle plans. Raven stood at the viewport of the briefing room, watching the blue-white tunnel of faster-than-light travel ripple around the ship. Hyperspace felt different from her portal magic, more mechanical, less mystical, but it achieved the same impossible result of crossing vast distances in moments. Behind her, Anakin and Obi-Wan studied holographic displays showing Ryloth's orbital defenses. Admiral Wolf Yularen, a career military officer whose emotional signature radiated disciplined competence, pointed at droid ship formations with tactical precision. The Separatist blockade consists of 6 Munificent-class frigates and 1 Lucrahulk-class battleship, Yularen explained. Their configuration suggests they're prepared for a conventional assault. They won't be expecting unconventional tactics. Which is where I come in, Raven said, turning from the viewport. She'd spent the previous night researching this galaxy through the Temple archives, absorbing information about the Clone Wars, the political complexities, and the technology that defined combat here. You want me to provide a distraction while your forces break through their lines. More than a distraction, Anakin corrected, manipulating the holographic display to show a specific droid frigate. That ship is their command vessel. It's coordinating the entire blockade through a centralized tactical computer. If we disable it, the other ships will lose coordination. They'll still fight, but they'll be reactive rather than strategic. And you think I can disable an entire capital ship by myself? Raven asked, one eyebrow rising. You crushed 12 battle droids simultaneously during the Temple attack, Obi-Wan noted. Your telekinetic power operates on a scale comparable to Master Yoda's. If you can reach that command ship and target its central computer, yes, we believe you can disable it. Raven studied the hologram, her mind calculating vectors and possibilities. Getting to the ship is the problem. I can levitate, but not in vacuum, and I'm guessing your droid enemies will notice me flying through space toward their command vessel. Which is why you won't be alone, Anakin said, grinning with the particular confidence of someone who'd survived too many impossible situations. I'll fly escort in my fighter. We'll use an ARC-170 starfighter, modified with an external personnel carrier pod. You'll ride in the pod, protected from vacuum, while I provide cover fire and get you to the target. You want me to ride in a pod attached to a fighter while we fly through a battle? Raven's voice was flat with disbelief. I've done crazier things, Anakin replied. Trust me, this is actually one of my more conservative plans. Obi-Wan sighed. That's the part that worries me. Anakin, your definition of conservative tends to involve property damage and council reprimands. But we always complete the mission, Anakin countered. Admiral Yularen cleared his throat. Commander Skywalker, while your combat record is exemplary, I must express concern about this plan's viability. The personnel pod will be exposed to enemy fire if the droid point defense systems target it. Then I'll make sure they don't get the chance, Anakin interrupted. Admiral, with respect, this is the best option we have. Conventional assaults on that blockade have failed twice. We've lost good pilots trying to break through. Raven's abilities give us an advantage the Separatists can't anticipate. Raven felt the tension in the room, military doctrine clashing with desperate improvisation, experienced commanders uncomfortable with tactics that relied on variables they couldn't control. She understood their concern. In her universe, the Teen Titans operated with similar improvisation, driving Robin to distraction with plans that relied more on individual abilities than coordinated strategy. "I'll do it," Raven said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "Not because I trust Anakin's flying. I've known him for one day. But because I've read what the Separatists are doing to Ryloth's population. Starvation, slavery, genocide. I've fought beings like that before. I'm not going to stand by and let it continue." Anakin's grin widened. "See? She gets it." "What I get," Raven corrected, "is that wars create suffering, and someone needs to minimize that suffering however they can. But if your plan gets me killed, I'm haunting you, and my ghost will be very irritating." "I'll take that risk," Anakin replied. 20 minutes later, Raven found herself sealed inside a modified personnel pod attached to the underside of Anakin's ARC-170 starfighter. The pod was cramped, barely large enough for her to sit cross-legged, with a small viewport that offered a limited view of the space around them. Through her empathic connection to Anakin, she felt his confidence, his excitement at the upcoming combat, and underneath that, a darkness that resonated uncomfortably with her own. "Raven, can you hear me?" Anakin's voice came through a comm system built into the pod. "We're launching in 30 seconds. Just stay calm, focus on your meditation, and try not to freak out when we start doing evasive maneuvers." "I don't freak out," Raven replied. "I maintain emotional control at all times." "Sure you do," Anakin said, amusement evident. "That's why I can feel your anxiety through the Force. It's okay to be nervous. I was terrified my first time in space combat. Well, actually, I was 9 years old and accidentally flew into a droid control ship, but the point stands." Before Raven could process the absurdity of that statement, the Resolute's hangar bay opened, and Anakin's fighter launched into space. The transition was immediate and disorienting. One moment, Raven was inside the climate-controlled environment of a capital ship. The next, she was surrounded by the infinite void of space, hanging in a fragile metal pod, while laser fire streaked past in brilliant colors. The Separatist blockade filled the viewport, massive droid ships bristling with weapons, their hulls painted in browns and grays that somehow managed to look threatening, despite their utilitarian design. Vulture droid fighters swarmed from launch bays, their distinctive wing configurations making them look like mechanical birds of prey. "Hang on," Anakin called over the comm. "Things are about to get interesting." The ARC-170 dove into the droid fighter formation with reckless abandon. Raven felt the G-forces pressing against the pod as Anakin executed maneuvers that shouldn't have been possible. Spiraling loops, sudden reversals, moves that treated physics like suggestions rather than laws. His fighter's cannons spat coherent light, destroying vulture droids with casual precision. But more fighters were converging on their position, their automated targeting systems identifying the external pod as an anomaly requiring investigation. "Raven," Anakin said, his voice tight with concentration, "I'm going to need you to help with the fighters. Can you use your telekinesis in vacuum through the pod walls?" Raven closed her eyes, centering herself with her meditation mantra. "Azarath, Mitrian, Zinthos." Her soul self erupted from the pod, a massive spectral raven constructed of pure dark energy that ignored the vacuum and physics entirely, existing as mystical force made manifest. The construct swept through the vulture droid formation, her telekinetic power crushing automated fighters like insects. Through the comm, she heard Anakin's surprised laugh. "Okay, that's incredible. How are you doing that? There's no air in space for your energy to interact with." "It's mysticism," Raven replied, her voice strained from the effort of projecting her soul self while maintaining her physical form. "It doesn't follow your physics, but it's exhausting. I can't maintain this for long." "You won't have to," Anakin assured her. "We're almost at the command ship. Just need to, missile lock. Brace yourself." The ARC-170 rolled hard, evading a missile fired by the command frigate's point defense systems. Raven felt the pod shake as proximity explosions rocked their trajectory. Her mystical shield strained to protect both herself and the pod from shrapnel that could puncture the hull. "Anakin, this plan is insane," Raven shouted over the comm. "But it's working," Anakin countered. "We're almost there. I'm bringing us alongside the command ship's hull. When I give the signal, use your portal ability to teleport inside. Once you're in, find the central computer and shut it down. I'll keep the fighters off your back." "You want me to teleport blind into an enemy ship?" Raven's empathic senses recoiled at the idea. She'd need to create a portal without knowing the destination, risking materialization inside solid matter or in the middle of a reactor core. "I trust you," Anakin said simply. "You've got mystical senses I don't understand. Use them. Feel where it's safe to appear. The Force guided me for years before I understood what it was. Your mysticism can do the same." The words carried unexpected weight. Anakin was trusting her with his life, with the lives of the clone troopers depending on this mission, with the starving population of Ryloth below. It was the kind of faith she'd only experienced with the Teen Titans, people who looked at her darkness and chose to believe in her anyway. Raven extended her empathic senses beyond the pod, through the hull of the Separatist command ship. She felt the cold absence of organic life. These ships were crewed entirely by droids, mechanical minds that registered as voids in her emotional spectrum. But she also sensed the ship's systems, the flow of energy through conduits, the central computer processing millions of calculations per second. And she felt a space, a corridor junction, currently empty, with clear passage to the computer core. "I have a target," Raven said. "Get me as close as possible. I'll portal from the pod directly into the ship." Anakin brought the ARC-170 into a dangerously close approach, flying parallel to the command frigate's hull with less than 50 meters of clearance. Laser fire from other Separatist ships streaked past, missing by margins that suggested either incredible skill or impossible luck. "Now, Raven, go!" Raven's hands moved in mystical patterns, her voice chanting ancient words that had never been spoken in this galaxy before. "Azeroth, Metreon, Zinthos!" A portal of dark energy erupted around the pod, and suddenly Raven was inside the Separatist command ship, standing in a corridor while battle droids turned toward her with mechanical surprise. "Intruder detected," a droid announced in a synthetic monotone. "Opening fire." Raven's telekinesis caught the blaster bolts in midair, suspended them like frozen light, then redirected them back at their sources. The droids crumpled under their own firepower. She moved through the corridor with purpose, her empathic senses guiding her toward the computer core, while her mystical shields deflected fire from reinforcement droids responding to security alerts. The ship's interior was utilitarian, gray metal corridors lit by harsh artificial light, no decoration or comfort, designed purely for function. It reminded Raven of military installations in her own universe, places where efficiency trumped humanity. She reached the computer core within minutes, a massive chamber filled with processing units and holographic displays, showing the entire blockade's tactical disposition. At the center stood a tactical droid, more sophisticated than the standard battle droids, its programming allowing for strategic analysis rather than simple combat protocols. "Impossible," the tactical droid said, its vocabulator processing surprise through mechanical inflection. Organic life form appearing inside sealed vessel, calculating probability, 0%. Therefore, sensor malfunction, initiating diagnostic protocols. "I'm real," Raven said flatly, "and I'm here to shut you down." The tactical droid's photoreceptors focused on her. Analysis: unknown organic displaying abilities, inconsistent with documented force powers. Threat assessment: extreme, activating security countermeasures. Heavy blast doors slammed shut, sealing the computer core. Battle droids poured from hidden panels, their blasters tracking toward Raven with coordinated precision. The tactical droid itself drew a weapon, some kind of energy pistol designed for close-quarters combat. Raven's soul self exploded outward, filling the chamber with dark energy. Her telekinesis crushed battle droids against walls, crumpled their chassis like aluminum cans, tore weapons from mechanical hands. The tactical droid tried to calculate a response, tried to adapt to threats its programming had never encountered, but mysticism didn't follow rules that computers could process. Within seconds, the security force was destroyed. Only the tactical droid remained, its systems struggling to comprehend what had just occurred. "You operate outside known parameters," the droid observed. "Magic, mysticism, abilities that violate physical laws. The Separatist Alliance requires this data, transmitting tactical analysis to..." Raven's hand closed into a fist, and the tactical droid's transmitter crumpled. "No one's learning about my abilities. Not the Separatists, not the Sith, not anyone who'd use that knowledge against innocent people." She approached the central computer, studying its architecture with mystical senses that perceived information flow as streams of light. Shutting it down would be simple. A few key commands, some physical damage to critical components. But something about the computer's programming caught her attention. The blockade coordinates, the targeting priorities, the tactical directives, they were specifically designed to maximize civilian suffering. The Separatists weren't just blockading Ryloth, they were intentionally starving the population, denying medical supplies, creating conditions that would force surrender through genocide. Raven felt rage building in her chest, her father's demonic power responding to the emotion. Trigon had destroyed civilizations for sport. The Separatists were doing it for political advantage. The methodology was different, but the cruelty was identical. Azarath, Metrion, Zinthos. The mantra pushed back the darkness, maintained control even as fury threatened to consume her. She destroyed the computer core methodically, not with explosive force, but with surgical precision, ensuring the damage couldn't be quickly repaired. The holographic displays flickered and died. Throughout the blockade, Separatist ships suddenly lost their coordinated tactics, each vessel reverting to autonomous operation protocols that were effective but uncoordinated. Through the hull, Raven felt the shift in the battle. Republic ships were breaking through the weakened blockade, their assault shuttles diving toward Ryloth's surface, carrying the food and medical supplies that would save thousands of lives. Raven, whatever you did, it's working. Anakin's voice crackled through her realm link. The droid ships are breaking formation. We're pushing through. Now get out of there before they realize what happened and decide to self-destruct the whole ship. The warning came seconds too late. The command frigate's automated systems, recognizing catastrophic computer failure, initiated emergency protocols. Red alert klaxons wailed through the corridors. A synthetic voice announced, "Critical systems failure detected. Initiating self-destruct sequence. All personnel evacuate immediately. Detonation in 5 minutes." Raven ran through the corridors, her levitation allowing her to move faster than human sprinting. Battle droids tried to intercept her, but she tore through them with telekinetic force, leaving a trail of mechanical wreckage in her wake. 4 minutes. She reached an external airlock, but it was sealed. Blast doors locked down during combat operations. Raven's mystical senses searched for Anakin's fighter, found him circling nearby, fighting off vulture droids that were trying to prevent Republic forces from exploiting the blockade's collapse. 3 minutes. "Anakin, the ship's self-destructing. I'm trapped inside." Through the Force, through whatever mystical connection existed between beings who understood darkness and control, she felt Anakin's immediate response. Not panic, not calculation, just absolute certainty. "Open the airlock manually. I'll catch you." "Catch me? We're in space. There's no air." "No! Trust me!" Anakin's voice carried the same confidence he'd shown during their insane flight through the droid fighters. "I've done this before, sort of. Open the airlock, jump toward my fighter, and I'll grab you with the Force, just like catching a falling friend, except with more vacuum and explosions." 2 minutes. Raven stared at the airlock controls. Every rational part of her mind screamed that this was suicide, jumping into vacuum without protection, trusting a Jedi she barely knew to catch her using powers she didn't fully understand. But the alternative was being vaporized when the ship exploded. She ripped the airlock controls from the wall with telekinetic force, overriding safety protocols through pure mystical power. The doors began cycling open. 1 minute. Raven wrapped herself in her soul self, the dark energy construct providing some protection from vacuum, though she knew it wouldn't last long. Her mystical shields could survive many things, but sustained exposure to hard vacuum would drain her reserves within seconds. The airlock opened, and decompression tried to suck her into space. Raven jumped instead, projecting herself toward Anakin's fighter, with levitation augmented by desperation. 30 seconds. She felt Anakin's presence in the Force, his power reaching across the void, wrapping around her like invisible hands, pulling her toward his fighter with a precision that suggested he'd done this exact maneuver in training or combat dozens of times. 20 seconds. Raven slammed into the personnel pod with bone-jarring force, her mystical shields the only thing preventing broken ribs from the impact. The pod sealed automatically, atmosphere flooding back in as she gasped for breath. 10 seconds. Anakin's fighter accelerated away from the command frigate, pushing engines beyond their rated specifications. Behind them, the Separatist ship's core overloaded. The explosion was beautiful and terrible, a sphere of expanding plasma that consumed the command frigate and damaged 2 nearby droid vessels. Shrapnel and radiation scattered across the battlefield, forcing both Republic and Separatist forces to adjust their formations. "That," Anakin said over the comm, his breathing heavy from exertion, "was incredible. Terrifying and incredibly stupid, but incredible. Remind me never to doubt your ability to survive impossible situations." Raven lay in the pod, her whole body trembling from adrenaline and exhaustion. "Remind me never to trust your plans. You said this was one of your conservative ideas. I'd hate to see what you consider risky." "Oh, risky involves riding on the outside of the ship," Anakin replied cheerfully. This was definitely conservative by comparison. Through the pod's viewport, Raven watched as Republic assault shuttles descended toward Ryloth's surface, protected now by the confusion in the Separatist blockade. She felt the relief emanating from the ships. Clone troopers who knew they were saving lives, Jedi who'd watched too many humanitarian crises spiral into atrocities. And she felt something else, watching from impossible distances, his presence in the Force like ice water against her mystical senses. Count Dooku had observed the entire battle, had watched her performance, had analyzed her capabilities with the cold precision of a predator studying prey. "Magnificent," his mental voice whispered across the void. "Such power, such control. The Jedi will never appreciate what you are, child of darkness, but I do. And when you tire of their restrictions, their fear of your nature, I will be waiting with understanding and opportunity." Raven slammed her mental shields closed, cutting off Dooku's contact. But his words lingered, carrying a seductive logic that frightened her more than any physical threat. Because part of her, the part that had spent years being feared, being lectured about controlling her emotions, being treated as a potential threat rather than a person, understood exactly what Dooku was offering. Acceptance, understanding, power without apology. It was the same thing Trigon had always offered, and Raven knew where that path led. "Anakin," she said quietly, "we need to talk when we get back to the Resolute." "About what?" Anakin asked, his tone shifting to concern. "About Dooku, about temptation, and about what happens when people who struggle with darkness start believing the dark side might actually understand them better than the light." The silence that followed suggested Anakin understood exactly what she was talking about, and that terrified both of them. The debriefing aboard the Resolute lasted 3 hours. Admiral Yularen praised the mission's tactical success, the blockade broken, supply shuttles reaching Ryloth's surface, thousands of lives saved. Obi-Wan expressed measured approval while simultaneously lecturing Anakin about the dangers of improvisation. The clone troopers who'd witnessed Raven's combat capabilities treated her with a mixture of awe and wariness, unsure how to categorize someone whose powers felt wrong in ways they couldn't articulate. Raven endured it all with her characteristic stoic expression, answering questions about her capabilities with clinical precision while carefully avoiding details about the mystical dimensions her power drew from. The less these people understood about Trigon, about Azarath, about the demonic heritage flowing through her veins, the better. But when the debriefing finally concluded, when the officers and troopers filed out, leaving only Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Master Yoda via holographic transmission, Raven spoke the words that had been building since Dooku's mental contact. Count Dooku is recruiting me, actively. He made another attempt during the battle, offering understanding and acceptance the Jedi supposedly can't provide. She looked directly at Yoda's holographic form. He knows I struggle with darkness. He knows the Jedi Council fears what I am. And he's using that knowledge to position himself as the only person in this galaxy who could truly understand me. The hologram flickered slightly, a function of the long-distance transmission, rather than any reaction from Yoda himself, but his ancient eyes narrowed thoughtfully. Surprised by this, I am not. Dooku's way, this has always been, find those who feel rejected, misunderstood, offer them belonging, then corrupt them slowly, until the dark side seems natural. Wise you are to recognize the manipulation. Recognizing it doesn't make it less effective, Raven replied. I've spent my entire life being feared because of my father. People look at me and see a threat. They sense the darkness and assume I'll eventually lose control, become the monster they expect. Dooku's offering something I've rarely experienced, acceptance without conditions. Anakin shifted uncomfortably, and Raven felt his emotional response. Recognition, understanding, the uncomfortable realization that Dooku's tactics resonated with his own experiences. The Council doesn't fear you, Anakin said, though his tone suggested he didn't entirely believe his own words. They're cautious. There's a difference. Is there? Raven challenged. Master Plo Koon reached for his lightsaber when we first met. Master Windu wanted to keep me under observation, like I was a dangerous animal. The only reason I'm not imprisoned right now is because Master Yoda advocated for me. That's not trust, Anakin. That's provisional tolerance dependent on good behavior. Obi-Wan stroked his beard, his expression thoughtful. You're not entirely wrong. The Jedi Order has become rigid during this war. We've been forced into military roles we were never meant to occupy, and that's made us suspicious of anything that doesn't fit our understanding of the Force. But Raven, that rigidity isn't an excuse to embrace the alternative Dooku represents. I'm not planning to join the Sith, Raven said flatly. I've spent too many years fighting my father's influence to voluntarily submit to another manipulative megalomaniac. But I need you to understand, the longer I stay in this galaxy, the more Dooku will press his advantage. He's patient, he's sophisticated, and he understands psychological warfare better than any demon I've ever fought. Yoda's holographic form leaned forward on his walking stick. A proposal, then, I have. If Dooku seeks to recruit you, use this we can. Bait for a trap, you could be. Draw him out, into a confrontation where prepared we are. Absolutely not, Anakin said immediately, his voice sharp with protective anger. You want to use her as bait. She just helped us break a blockade and save thousands of lives, and your response is to put her in more danger. Skywalker, Obi-Wan said carefully. Master Yoda isn't suggesting we abandon Raven to face Dooku alone. He's proposing a controlled operation where we could potentially capture or eliminate a Sith Lord who's been orchestrating separatist operations for years. It's tactically sound. It's using people as pawns, Anakin countered. The same thing you lecture me about when I get emotionally attached. You say the Jedi don't treat people as tools, but that's exactly what this is. Raven watched the argument unfold, her empathic senses picking up the deeper currents beneath the tactical debate. Anakin's protective instinct wasn't just about her. It was about every time he'd felt used by the Council, every mission where Jedi had been deployed as expendable assets in a political conflict. His anger was personal, rooted in frustrations that predated her arrival by years. "Both of you, stop," Raven said, her voice carrying command authority that surprised even her. "Master Yoda, I appreciate the strategic thinking, but I'm not bait. I've been manipulated by cosmic entities before, and I'm not interested in being manipulated by well-intentioned Jedi Masters either. If Dooku wants a confrontation, it'll happen on my terms, not as part of someone else's tactical operation." The holographic Yoda's ears lowered slightly, his version of acknowledging a valid point. "Respect your autonomy, I do, but face Dooku eventually, you will. Prepared for this you must be, trained, perhaps, in ways the Jedi can offer." "I don't need Jedi training," Raven replied. "My mysticism operates on completely different principles than your force. Trying to make me fit into your tradition would be like trying to teach someone to swim by showing them how to fly. Adjacent skills, completely different execution." "Perhaps," Obi-Wan interjected, "but understanding the Force, particularly the dark side, could help you recognize when Dooku is using it to influence your emotions. The Sith are masters of emotional manipulation, using the Force to amplify fear, anger, doubt. If you can sense those manipulations, you'll be better equipped to resist them." The logic was sound, and Raven found herself nodding reluctantly. "Fine. I'll learn about the Force, about the dark side, about Sith tactics, but I'm not becoming a Jedi. I'm not adopting your philosophy or your restrictions. I'm gathering intelligence that might keep me alive in a galaxy I don't understand." "A reasonable position," Yoda acknowledged. "Young Skywalker, teach her you will. Your experience with darkness, useful it may prove, and perspective from one who struggles similarly. Valuable for you both it could be." Anakin looked surprised. "Master, the Council was concerned about me spending time with Raven because of her darkness. Now you're assigning me to teach her about the dark side. That seems contradictory." "Trust you more. The Council must learn," Yoda replied. "And trust herself more. Young Raven must learn. Both of you, touched by darkness, are. Both of you, choosing light every day. Help each other. You can. Or destroy each other. Which outcome occurs, your choices will determine." The hologram disconnected, leaving the three of them in the briefing room. Obi-Wan studied Anakin with barely concealed concern. "I hope you understand what Master Yoda is doing. This is a test for both of you. He's trusting that your shared struggle with darkness will create mutual understanding rather than mutual corruption." "I won't corrupt her," Anakin said defensively. "And I won't corrupt him," Raven added. "Contrary to popular belief, darkness isn't contagious. You don't catch it from proximity to people who struggle with it. You choose it through thousands of small decisions that prioritize power over principle." "Wise words," Obi-Wan acknowledged. "I just hope you both remember them when Dooku makes his inevitable move. Because he will move, The question is when and how, and whether you'll be ready when it happens. The training began the next day in one of the Resolute's cargo bays, converted into a makeshift meditation chamber. Anakin sat cross-legged on the deck plating, his presence in the Force radiating controlled power. Raven sat opposite him, her own mystical energy creating subtle ripples in the space around her. The Force flows through all living things, Anakin explained, his voice taken on the cadence of someone reciting lessons learned years ago. It has two aspects, the light side and the dark side. The light comes from peace, serenity, harmony. The dark comes from passion, anger, fear. Jedi teachings say we should eliminate emotion to serve the light. But that's... He paused, struggling with the words. That's not entirely accurate. You don't believe in eliminating emotion, Raven observed. I believe emotion makes us human, Anakin replied. Or Togruta, or Twi'lek, or whatever species we're talking about. The point is, emotions aren't inherently dark side. Love, compassion, loyalty, those are emotions too. The Jedi want us to be detached, but I think attachment gives us something to fight for, something worth protecting. Raven recognized the philosophy. It was remarkably similar to her own approach to controlling darkness. Emotions aren't the enemy. Losing control to emotions is the enemy. I feel anger, fear, all the things my father uses to corrupt people. But I don't let those feelings control my actions. There's a difference between experiencing darkness and being consumed by it. Exactly. Anakin's excitement was palpable. That's what the Council doesn't understand. They think any strong emotion is a step toward the dark side, but suppressing emotions just makes them stronger, more dangerous when they finally break free. Better to acknowledge them, understand them, and choose how to respond to them. Your masters wouldn't approve of this philosophy, Raven noted. Anakin's expression darkened. Obi-Wan worries about me constantly. The Council watches for signs of corruption. They don't trust me, even though I've proven myself in combat hundreds of times. Because I feel things deeply. Because I care about people in ways Jedi aren't supposed to care. They assume I'll eventually fall to the dark side. The bitterness in his voice resonated with Raven's own experiences. They're afraid of what they don't understand. It's easier to enforce rigid rules than to accept that people can walk the line between light and dark without falling. Is that what you do? Anakin asked. Walk the line. Raven considered the question carefully. I exist on the line. I'm not light side. I use powers that would horrify your council if they fully understood them. But I'm not dark side either. I fight every day to prevent my father's corruption from consuming me. I'm something else. Something your binary philosophy doesn't have room for. The Jedi are wrong about a lot of things, Anakin said quietly. Their absolutism, their fear of attachment, their inability to adapt to changing circumstances. This war has shown me that, but they're not wrong about everything. The dark side is real, and it is corrupting. I've felt it, felt the temptation to just let go. To stop fighting my emotions and use my anger, my fear, my passion to make me stronger. And what stops you? Raven asked. Anakin was silent for a long moment. The people I love, the lives I'm responsible for, the knowledge that if I fall to the dark side, I become the kind of monster that destroys rather than protects. That's not strength. That's weakness disguised as power." The answer surprised Raven with its maturity. Beneath Anakin's arrogance and impulsiveness was genuine wisdom, hard-earned through experiences she could sense but not fully access. "You're stronger than the Council gives you credit for." "Tell them that," Anakin replied with a bitter laugh. "They see the Chosen One, this prophesied savior who's supposed to bring balance to the Force, but they don't see me. They see a vessel for destiny, not a person struggling to understand his place in an impossible war." Raven understood that feeling intimately. "I'm the portal meant to bring my demonic father into my dimension. My existence was designed for a specific purpose: destruction and conquest. Every relationship I've ever had started with people seeing what I was supposed to be rather than who I chose to become. So we're both fighting prophecies," Anakin observed, "both refusing to be what we were supposedly meant to be. The difference," Raven said carefully, "is that I've had years to develop mental disciplines that keep me from being consumed. You're still learning, and that makes you vulnerable to exactly the kind of manipulation Dooku specializes in." Anakin's jaw tightened. "I'm not going to fall to the dark side." "I believe you think that," Raven replied. "But Dooku doesn't recruit people by offering obvious corruption. He finds your legitimate grievances, your valid frustrations, and amplifies them. Makes you feel justified in your anger. Makes darkness seem like the only logical response to an unjust galaxy." "Sounds like you're speaking from experience." "My father has been trying to corrupt me since I was born," Raven said. "I know every tactic, every psychological manipulation, every way darkness can make itself seem reasonable. That's why I recognize what Dooku's doing. He's not going to offer you obvious evil. He's going to offer you what you want most and make it seem like the Jedi are the only obstacle standing between you and happiness." The cargo bay fell silent. Anakin's presence in the Force roiled with conflicting emotions, recognition of truth, defensive denial, and underneath it all, fear. Fear that Raven was right. Fear that he wasn't as strong as he believed. Fear that the darkness was closer than he wanted to admit. "Show me," Anakin said finally. "Show me what your mysticism feels like. Let me understand what you're fighting against, so I can help you resist Dooku's recruitment attempts." Raven hesitated. Opening her mystical senses to another person was intimate, dangerous. It meant revealing the full extent of her darkness, the constant presence of Trigon's corruption, the daily battle to maintain control. "Anakin, I'm not sure that's wise. My darkness isn't like Force darkness. It's alien, demonic, fundamentally different from anything you've encountered." "I need to understand," Anakin insisted. "If we're going to help each other, if we're going to resist corruption together, I need to know what I'm working with." Against her better judgment, Raven lowered her mental shields partially. Her empathic abilities created a connection, not deep, not invasive, but enough for Anakin to sense what she carried. Anakin gasped, his whole body going rigid. Through their connection, he felt what Raven lived with every moment, the weight of demonic power pressing against her consciousness, Trigon's presence like a cancer in her soul, whispering promises of strength if she'd only surrender control. The meditation mantras she chanted constantly, Azarath Metrion Zinthos, were the only thing keeping that tide of corruption at bay. "How do you live with this?" Anakin asked, his voice shaking. This constant pressure, this feeling like you're one moment of weakness away from being consumed. I can barely stand it for seconds. And you've carried it for years. You learn, Raven replied, severing the connection before it became too much. You build mental disciplines. You find anchors, people, principles, purposes that remind you why maintaining control matters, and you never, ever convince yourself you're strong enough to stop fighting. Anakin took several deep breaths, clearly shaken by the experience. The dark side feels similar, not identical, but similar. This constant pull toward anger, toward fear, toward using passion instead of peace. The Jedi say to resist it through detachment, but that doesn't work. Detachment just makes you cold, unfeeling, not light, just empty. So what does work? Raven asked. Connection, Anakin said, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. Caring about people so much that you refuse to become something that would hurt them. Loving something bigger than your own power. That's what keeps me from falling. Not Jedi philosophy, but the knowledge that people I love depend on me to be better than my worst impulses. The conversation was interrupted by proximity alarms wailing throughout the ship. Admiral Yularen's voice crackled over the intercom. All hands to battle stations. Multiple separatist vessels emerging from hyperspace. This is not a drill. Anakin and Raven rushed to the bridge, where tactical displays showed a devastating sight. 3 separatist frigates had appeared in system, positioning themselves between the Resolute and the hyperspace jump point. But these weren't standard droid vessels. Their configurations were wrong, their energy signatures too sophisticated. And standing on the bridge of the lead frigate, his presence in the Force unmistakable even across the void, was Count Dooku. Incoming transmission, the communications officer reported. It's Count Dooku himself. He's requesting to speak with Raven specifically. Obi-Wan, who had arrived on the bridge seconds after Anakin and Raven, shook his head firmly. Don't accept it. This is psychological warfare. He wants to get inside her head. He's already inside my head, Raven countered. Has been since I arrived in this galaxy. At least if I talk to him directly, I'll know what I'm dealing with instead of wondering what he's planning. It's a trap, Obi-Wan insisted. Everything's a trap, Raven replied. That doesn't mean you can ignore it. Admiral, put him through. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing Count Dooku in all his aristocratic menace. He was older than Raven expected, perhaps 70 standard years, with a silver beard and eyes that radiated controlled power. His presence felt different from the Jedi she'd encountered. Colder, more certain, utterly convinced of his own righteousness. Raven, Dooku greeted her with cultured politeness. How delightful to finally speak with you directly. I've been observing your integration into Republic service with great interest. Tell me, have the Jedi properly expressed their gratitude for your assistance at Ryloth? Or are they still debating whether you're too dangerous to tolerate? They're cautious, Raven replied, keeping her voice neutral. Which is smart, given they don't understand my abilities. What do you want, Dooku? Straight to the point. How refreshing. Dooku's smile carried genuine amusement. I want to offer you an alternative, child of darkness. The Jedi will never accept what you are. They fear the darkness within you. Fear what would happen if you lost control. They'll use your abilities when convenient and discard you when the war ends. I, however, understand what it means to carry power that others fear. I was once a Jedi Master. I know their hypocrisy intimately. So you turned to the dark side and started a galactic war, Raven observed. That's your solution to hypocrisy. Become what they feared you'd become. Dooku's expression hardened. I became what was necessary to destroy a corrupt system. The Republic is stagnant, the Jedi are blind, and the galaxy needs radical transformation. With your power, with my guidance, we could reshape everything. No more hiding your nature. No more pretending your darkness is something to be ashamed of. I'm not ashamed of my darkness, Raven replied, but I don't use it as an excuse to hurt innocent people. Your separatist forces starve civilians, enslave populations, commit atrocities in the name of political change. That's not transformation. That's tyranny wearing a philosophical mask. Spoken like someone who's spent too much time among Jedi, Dooku said. They've already begun corrupting your perspective. But I'm patient. Eventually you'll see the truth. Eventually, you'll recognize that power without restraint is the only honest path forward. Is that why you're here? Anakin interjected, stepping beside Raven on the bridge. To lecture us about philosophy while your ships position themselves for attack. Dooku's attention shifted to Anakin, and something predatory entered his expression. Ah, young Skywalker, still clinging to Jedi orthodoxy despite your obvious dissatisfaction with their teachings. Tell me, Anakin, do the Masters know about your secret marriage, about the nights you spend questioning whether the Jedi Code truly serves the greater good? The bridge went silent. Obi-Wan's head turned sharply toward Anakin, shock evident in his expression. Raven felt Anakin's emotional response, panic, fury, desperate denial all crashing together. I don't know what you're talking about, Anakin said, but his voice carried the brittleness of a lie spoken under pressure. Don't you? Dooku's smile was cruel. The Sith have many ways of gathering intelligence. Young Skywalker, we know about Senator Amidala. We know about your attachment to her. We know that the Jedi Council would expel you immediately if they learned the truth. You're living a lie, Anakin. How long before that lie consumes you? Raven felt the moment crystallize, Dooku's true strategy becoming clear. He wasn't trying to recruit her through offers of power. He was trying to destroy Anakin's faith in the Jedi by exposing secrets, creating conflict, forcing divisions between master and apprentice. This was psychological warfare at its most sophisticated. Dooku, Raven said, her voice cutting through the tension. You made a mistake. The Sith Lord raised an eyebrow. Indeed. And what mistake would that be? You assumed I'd care about Jedi politics, Raven replied. You thought revealing Anakin's secrets would make me see the Jedi as hypocrites worth abandoning. But I already know they're flawed. Every organization is flawed. The question isn't whether the Jedi are perfect. It's whether they're better than the alternative you're offering. And you believe they are? Dooku challenged. I believe, Raven said carefully, that fighting to protect innocent people is better than conquering them, that controlling your darkness is better than embracing it, and that anyone offering easy answers to complicated questions is lying. You're lying, Dooku, about power, about freedom, about what you really want from me. So no, I'm not interested in your recruitment pitch. Dooku's expression shifted. disappointment mixed with something that might have been respect. A pity. You would have been a magnificent apprentice, but if you insist on aligning yourself with the Republic's failing cause, then you leave me no choice but to demonstrate the consequences of that decision. The transmission cut off. Immediately, the 3 separatist frigates opened fire, plasma weapons hammering the Resolute's shields with coordinated precision. "Evasive maneuvers," Admiral Yularen commanded. "Return fire. Get us to the hyperspace jump point." But the separatist ships had positioned themselves perfectly, blocking escape routes, forcing the Resolute into a defensive position where Republic reinforcements couldn't arrive quickly enough. Obi-Wan activated his lightsaber, the blue blade humming to life. "Dooku's on the lead frigate. If we can disable that ship, capture him." "We're not capturing him," Anakin interrupted, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. Raven felt his emotional state spiraling, Dooku's revelation about his marriage combining with years of frustration, creating a volatile mix of anger and fear. "We're killing him, ending this war by removing its leadership." "Anakin, no," Obi-Wan said firmly. "That's exactly what he wants, to push you toward darkness through rage and vengeance. We engage tactically, not emotionally." But Anakin was already moving toward the hangar bay, his presence in the Force radiating dangerous intent. Raven followed, her empathic senses screaming warnings about what was happening. "Anakin, stop," she said, catching his arm. "This is exactly what I warned you about. Dooku is manipulating your emotions, using your anger to push you toward decisions you'll regret." "He exposed my marriage," Anakin said, his voice raw. "He just destroyed any chance I had of maintaining my position with the Jedi. My entire life is over because he wanted to make a point. So yes, I'm angry, and yes, I'm going to make him pay for it." Raven tightened her grip. "And when you kill him in rage, when you use the dark side to achieve victory, that's not justice, Anakin. That's revenge. That's exactly what your father Dooku wants, to prove that you're just like him beneath the Jedi facade." The words hit home. Anakin froze, his fury crashing against the truth Raven had spoken. "He's not my father." "He's trying to be," Raven countered. "He's offering you power through darkness, understanding the Jedi supposedly can't provide, acceptance of your anger and passion. That's what demons do, Anakin. That's what Trigon did to me for years. And I'm telling you, following that path leads nowhere good." The Resolute shuddered under another barrage. Somewhere nearby, clone troopers scrambled to battle stations. The ship's shields were dropping, systems failing, time running out. Anakin looked at Raven, conflict written across every feature. "What do I do? How do I fight him without using the anger he created?" "You don't fight alone," Raven replied. "You trust your master, you trust me, and you let us face Dooku together, not as individuals pursuing revenge, but as people protecting something worth preserving." For a moment, Raven thought Anakin would reject her advice, would charge off alone, pursuing violent catharsis. But then something shifted in his emotional landscape. Acceptance of help, recognition that strength came from connection rather than isolation. "Together," Anakin agreed. "We face him together. But Raven, if he tries to corrupt you, if he uses his Force abilities to amplify your darkness, then I'll do what I've done every day since I was born." Raven interrupted. "I'll fight, and I'll choose light over darkness, even when darkness seems easier, Because that's who I am. And it's who you are too, Anakin. Don't let Dooku convince you otherwise." They rushed to the hangar bay, where Obi-Wan was already coordinating a boarding party. Clone troopers in specialized space assault gear prepared for combat, while Jedi Knight Ayla Secura provided tactical oversight. "The plan," Obi-Wan explained rapidly, "is to board Dooku's frigate, disable their weapon systems, and capture or eliminate the Count. It's risky, but with the Resolute taking heavy damage, we don't have many options." "I'm going," Raven said. "So am I," Anakin added. Obi-Wan studied them both, his former apprentice and the mysterious girl from another dimension, and nodded slowly. "Then let's end this, together." The assault shuttle launched into space, carrying Jedi, clones, and one daughter of a demon toward a confrontation that would determine whether darkness could be faced without becoming darkness itself. Count Dooku waited aboard his frigate, confident that one way or another he would add powerful apprentices to his collection. He'd faced Jedi before, corrupted them, turned them to his purposes, but he'd never faced someone like Raven, someone who'd spent her entire life resisting corruption from entities far older and more powerful than any Sith Lord. The shuttle approached the Separatist frigate, weapons fire lighting up space around them, and Raven whispered her mantra one more time. "Azarath, Mitrian, Zinthos." The battle for her soul, and Anakin's, was about to begin. The Separatist frigate's interior was similar to the command ship Raven had infiltrated at Ryloth. Cold metal corridors, harsh lighting, functional design devoid of comfort or aesthetics. But this ship felt different in her mystical senses. Darker, corrupted by prolonged exposure to Dooku's presence, the dark side seeping into bulkheads and deck plating like spiritual contamination. Battle droids poured from side corridors, their blasters firing in coordinated volleys. The clone troopers returned fire with professional precision, while Obi-Wan and Anakin deflected bolts with their lightsabers, the Jedi moving with enhanced speed through the chaos. Raven's soul self erupted from her body, sweeping through droid formations with telekinetic fury. She crushed chassis, tore weapons from mechanical hands, created corridors of destruction that allowed the assault force to advance toward the bridge. But with each use of her power, she felt something responding. The ship itself, corrupted by dark side energy, was amplifying her darkness. Triggan's presence stirred in the depths of her consciousness, recognizing opportunity. "Yes," her father's voice whispered. "This place understands you. This darkness resonates with your true nature. Why fight what you are? Why pretend weakness is virtue? Azarath, Metrian, Zinthos." The mantra pushed back Trigon's influence, maintained control even as the ship's corruption pressed against her mental shields. They reached the bridge to find it empty, except for one figure. Count Dooku stood at the center viewport, hands clasped behind his back, his presence in the Force radiating controlled power. His lightsaber hung at his belt, deactivated as if combat was beneath consideration. "Kenobi," Dooku greeted his former colleague with cold politeness. "Skywalker, and the child of demons, how kind of you to deliver yourselves directly to me. Your ship is damaged, your droids are destroyed, and you're outnumbered," Obi-Wan replied, his lightsaber humming readily. "Surrender, Dooku. This doesn't have to end in violence, doesn't it?" Dooku's hand moved to his lightsaber, the curved hilt igniting into a blade of brilliant red. I think violence is precisely how this ends. The question is whether it ends with your corpses or your corruption. He moved with impossible speed, decades of Jedi training, augmented by Sith power, creating a combatant who transcended normal physical limitations. His red blade clashed against Obi-Wan's blue, the impact sending shockwaves through the Force. Anakin joined the fight immediately, his aggressive Form V technique creating a two-pronged attack that should have overwhelmed any single opponent. But Dooku wasn't any opponent. He was a master duelist who'd trained generations of Jedi, who understood their techniques intimately, who could predict their moves before they executed them. "You're strong, young Skywalker," Dooku observed, parrying both Jedi simultaneously. But strength without discipline is just flailing. The Jedi have failed to teach you proper form. I, however, could correct that deficiency. "I don't need your teaching," Anakin growled, his strikes becoming more aggressive, more fueled by anger. "Don't you?" Dooku's blade locked against Anakin's, bringing them face to face. "I can feel your rage, your fear, the Jedi marriage you've hidden, the secret that now threatens everything. Tell me, Anakin, what would you do to protect the woman you love? What darkness would you embrace if it meant keeping her safe?" Anakin's fury spiked, his next strike carrying dark side power that made Raven's mystical senses scream warnings. Obi-Wan felt it too, his expression showing alarm as his former apprentice teetered on the edge of falling. "Anakin, control yourself," Obi-Wan commanded. "This is what he wants." But Dooku had already shifted his attention to Raven. His presence in the Force reached toward her. Not attacking, but inviting. "You feel it, don't you? The ship's darkness resonating with your own. The power waiting to be unleashed if you'd only stop fighting your nature. Your father was right, Raven. You were meant for more than suppressing what you are." The words carried Force-enhanced persuasion, amplifying doubts that already existed. Raven felt her mental shield strain, felt Trigon's presence surge with renewed strength, felt the temptation to simply let go of control and embrace the power that came naturally. "No," she said, but her voice carried less certainty than before. "Yes," Dooku countered, pressing his advantage. Through the Force and through pure psychological manipulation, he painted a picture. Acceptance, understanding, power without apology. Everything she'd ever wanted, offered freely by someone who genuinely understood carrying darkness. Raven's hands trembled, her soul self flickered, unstable. For a moment, just one terrible moment, she almost surrendered. Then she felt it. Anakin's presence in the Force, equally torn, equally tempted. Obi-Wan fighting desperately to protect his former apprentice from corruption. Clone troopers depending on her strength. Billions of people across the galaxy who'd die if Dooku succeeded in his plans. And deeper, in memories from another dimension. The Teen Titans. Beast Boy making her smile despite herself. Starfire's unconditional friendship. Cyborg's steady support. Robin's faith that she could be more than her heritage. They'd believed in her when no one else did. They'd looked at her darkness and chosen to stand beside her anyway. She wouldn't betray that faith. Not for Dooku, not for Trigon, not for anyone. Azarath, Metrion, Zinthos. The mantra exploded from her lips with physical force, her mystical power erupting outward in a shockwave that sent Dooku staggering. Her soul self manifested fully, not the controlled projection she usually maintained, but the raw, undiluted power she spent every day suppressing. The spectral raven filled the bridge, its dark energy overwhelming the ship's corruption, overpowering even Dooku's dark side presence. This wasn't force power. This was something older, more fundamental, drawn from dimensions that preceded the physical universe. I am the daughter of Trigon. R. Continue, Tinnen 18. A maven's voice carried harmonics that suggested multiple beings speaking simultaneously. I carry his power, I know his corruption, and I reject it every single day. Her telekinesis seized Dooku, lifting the Sith Lord off his feet. His lightsaber fell from numb fingers as mystical energy bound him more effectively than any physical restraints. You can't. This power. Dooku struggled against bonds he couldn't break, his confidence finally cracking. You're using darkness to fight me. You've already fallen. Wrong, Raven replied, her soul self dissipating as she reasserted control. I'm using power that happens to be dark in origin to protect people who need protecting. There's a difference between using darkness and being consumed by it. That's what you never understood, Dooku. Darkness isn't evil. Surrendering to darkness is evil, and I will never surrender. The bridge fell silent, except for the hum of damaged systems. Anakin stood frozen, witnessing something the Jedi had never taught him. That power and darkness weren't automatically synonymous, that someone could touch the deepest shadows and choose light anyway. Obi-Wan approached Dooku cautiously, energy binders ready to secure the captured Sith Lord. It's over, Dooku. Your corruption ends here. Does it? Dooku asked, blood trickling from where Raven's mystical bindings had cut into his skin. You think capturing me ends the separatist movement? You think the Sith die with one old man's defeat? You're fools, all of you. The darkness is coming. A shadow greater than anything the galaxy has ever known. And when it arrives, you'll wish you'd joined me when you had the chance. The words carried prophecy weight that made Raven's mystical senses scream warnings. Dooku was talking about something beyond himself. Beyond the Clone Wars, beyond anything they currently understood. But before she could ask what he meant, the Sith Lord's eyes went distant. His mouth moved, speaking words that didn't originate from his own will. The chains are the easy part. It's what goes home with you that's hard. Then Count Dooku collapsed, unconscious or dead. Raven couldn't immediately tell which. Admiral Yularen's voice crackled over their comms. Jedi, the separatist ships are retreating. Whatever you did, it's working. We've secured the system. Victory. They'd won. Dooku was captured, the battle was over, and Raven had resisted corruption despite everything. So why did she feel like something terrible had just been set in motion? 3 weeks after the battle that saw Count Dooku captured and delivered to Republic custody, Raven stood in the Jedi Temple's meditation gardens, watching Coruscant's artificial sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. The gardens were one of the few places on the city planet where actual plants grew, where the Force flowed through living things rather than durasteel and transparasteel. Master Yoda found her there, his small form moving with surprising quiet. Leaving, you are considering, the ancient Jedi observed. It wasn't a question. The Council cleared me of suspicion. Raven replied. "I've proven I can resist dark side corruption. Mission accomplished. Now I need to focus on finding a way home to my dimension." "But stayed, you have," Yoda noted. 3 weeks, working with Republic forces, helping where help is needed. Why, if home you truly wish to reach? Raven considered the question carefully. "Because the Teen Titans taught me something. When you have power, you have responsibility to use it, protecting people who can't protect themselves. I may not be from this galaxy, but people here still need help. The war is still killing innocents, and I can make a difference." "A Jedi philosophy, that is," Yoda said, with what might have been approval. "Maybe," Raven acknowledged, "but I'm not becoming a Jedi. I respect your order, Master Yoda, but my path is my own. I'll work with you, fight alongside you, help where I can. But I won't abandon my mysticism or adopt your Force tradition." "Expected this. I did not," Yoda admitted. "Hoped, perhaps, but expected, no. Most who carry darkness as you do, consumed by it they become, yet chosen differently you have. Inspiring, this is. To young Skywalker especially." Anakin had changed since the confrontation with Dooku. Obi-Wan knew about his marriage now. That secret was impossible to maintain after Dooku's revelation. But instead of expulsion, the Council had granted unusual dispensation, recognizing that attachment hadn't corrupted Anakin, but rather grounded him. It was a small crack in Jedi orthodoxy, but an important one. "Anakin's going to be fine," Raven said. "He knows his darkness now, understands that fighting it is a daily choice, not a battle won once and forgotten. That makes him stronger than most Jedi, even if your council doesn't recognize it yet." "Recognize it they will," Yoda replied. "In time. Change slowly, the Order does. But change, it must. This war, revealing many flaws in our traditions. Perhaps your presence, catalyst for necessary evolution, it will prove." A message alert chimed on Raven's communicator. She checked it and smiled slightly, an expression rare enough that Yoda's ears perked with interest. "Republic intelligence found something," Raven explained. "Separatist research facility studying dimensional mechanics. There might be information there about how I arrived in this galaxy, which means there might be a way to reverse the process." "Go home, you may be able to," Yoda observed. "Yet sad you seem at this prospect. Why?" Raven looked out at the cityscape, at the endless layers of civilization stretching toward the horizon. "Because I've spent my whole life being feared for what I am. Here, I've found people who look at my darkness and choose to trust me anyway. The Teen Titans gave me that. And now, maybe, the Republic is offering it too. Going home means leaving that behind. But also means," Yoda added gently, "seeing friends again, a family. Those who knew you before this war, before this galaxy. Both homes, value they have, and perhaps, if dimensional travel possible proves, bridges between them we can build." The idea surprised Raven with its possibility, not choosing between universes, but connecting them, bringing the best of both dimensions together. It was optimistic in a way that made her uncomfortable. Hope had always felt dangerous, something that could be weaponized against her. But maybe that was Trigon's influence, teaching her that hope was weakness. Maybe actual wisdom meant accepting that hope, like darkness, was a tool that could be used for good or ill, depending on the wielder. "I'm going to check out that research facility," Raven decided. with Anakin and Obi-Wan. If there's a way home, I need to know. And if there isn't, well, there are worse places to be stranded than a galaxy that needs people willing to fight for something bigger than themselves. Yoda nodded slowly, his ancient eyes showing something that might have been pride. May the Force be with you, young Raven, and may your mysticism guide you well it continue to. Unique you are, special, and perhaps exactly what this galaxy needs in this dark time. As Raven left the gardens, preparing for another mission into the unknown, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Genuine acceptance. Not tolerance, not fearful accommodation, but actual acceptance of who and what she was. The daughter of Trigon the Terrible had arrived in the Clone Wars carrying darkness that terrified those who sensed it. But she'd proven that darkness didn't define destiny, that power could be wielded with restraint, that someone born to destroy could choose to protect. Count Dooku had tried to corrupt her, offering understanding and power without restriction. He'd failed, not because the Jedi had converted her to their philosophy, but because Raven had spent her entire life learning a truth the Sith refused to accept. That true strength came not from embracing darkness or suppressing it, but from acknowledging it and choosing light anyway. The Clone Wars would continue. More battles would be fought. Darkness would threaten to consume both Raven and Anakin in moments of weakness and desperation. But they would face it together, not as master and apprentice, not as Jedi and outsider, but as two people who understood that carrying darkness made you dangerous only if you surrendered to it. And neither of them planned to surrender. Ever. Somewhere in another dimension, the Teen Titans continued their own battles, wondering what had happened to their empathic teammate. Someday, maybe, Raven would find her way back to them, would tell them about the galaxy far, far away where the Force flowed and Jedi fought, and one girl from Earth had proven that mysticism and heroism transcended dimensional boundaries. But today, she had a mission, a facility to investigate, answers to find, and a galaxy to help save, one choice at a time. The Force flowed through all living things, binding the galaxy together. Mysticism connected dimensions, drew power from realms beyond reality, and somewhere in the space between those two forces, Raven had found her place. Not Jedi, not Sith, not even purely mystical, just Raven, daughter of demons, protector of innocence, hero. And that, finally, was enough.